Joining me on the Mercedes-Benz Vans phone line to talk about everything in Week 2, and by that I don't think we'll talk about everything because everything did in fact happen. The two-time Super Bowl champion and host of the highly popular Green Light podcast that he has created and is available wherever you get your podcast. Chris Long back here on the Rich Eisen Show, Mercedes-Benz Vans phone line. How you doing, Chris?
Rich, what's up, man? That was a crazy Sunday, huh?
Big time. I'm just going to throw open the floor to you. What's the headline from Week 2?
Well, the headline's Tua and the Dolphins,
Damn
man.
straight.
I mean, like we knew they were a playoff team probably, even in an AFC that's really tough. I think most people, I would say, picked them to finish ahead of the Pats and take a step forward. But Mike McDaniel, man, like they ran those DBs who were kind of hurting and thin, in Baltimore, with guys having to reshuffle, guys just coming back from injury. They ran them all over the field. I mean, I was looking at a next-gen stat that these guys ran 6,000 yards in total as a group. I mean, a ton of go routes. I think Waddle had more yards on go routes yesterday than he has in a long time. And Tua, man, like this is – you don't want to play out of phase like that. You don't want to have to throw 4 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. You don't want to spot teams 21 points. I mean, like as evidenced by some of the statistics you saw, like it's just so unlikely to come back in a game like that. So you don't want to do this with regularity, but this was a really good sign. And, I know that there's been kind of some back and forth that I've been on one side of with Tua throwing the deep ball, and he hit a couple of those yesterday. But the thing that really impressed me about Tua was the red zone stuff, 3rd and 13 to Gesicki. He made one play throwing to Craycraft down in the low red where he spins out the back of the pocket, and it looks like a Mahomes play. So a big confidence booster for him, especially for the fact that, that team responded. I mean, his completion over expectation, I think in the first half was -14. So, like, the second half of that game was big. And then Baltimore, man, that secondary is going to be a problem this year. Like, you lose Fuller. You've got guys shuffling around. Kyle Hamilton wasn't great. But more than anything, the running backs, you didn't get much out of them. They had multiple opportunities to close that game out, and in short yardage, usually from a Baltimore team, not only are they not going to give the ball back at the end of the game when Tucker kicked that field goal, but they're going to convert on 4th and short, not only early in the game when they fumbled, but late. So tough game for the Ravens, but it should be about the Dolphins yesterday. That was a really great performance.
Well, I mean, the question is as you know, we always in this world of the NFL media, now that it is an overreaction Monday, and I'm going to have that segment shortly. The question is how deep a threat are the Dolphins in terms of the playoffs? And for the short term, I didn't think you could have a battle joined within the division with the Bills. Certainly with the way that they can put points up. The Dolphins showed they could put points up with the Bills or the Chiefs. I mean, is the conference a doable thing, do you think, for the Miami Dolphins, Chris Long?
I mean, you never want to say never because obviously, I didn't think the McDaniel boost would be this impressive this early in the year. But I think we'll know a lot more in a couple weeks, and I think that's okay to say. I mean, the Bills, they got them this week. They're hosting the Bills coming up, and then they're going to go to the Bengals. And the Bengals, man, buy them low. I mean, Joe Burrow didn't have a training camp, that offensive line. You think about O-lines now trying to get together, new pieces. Doesn't excuse the performance, but you get 3 preseason games now. You don't get a lot of time on the field. So I think we're going to know more about, the Dolphins in the next couple of weeks. I want to see them win games in phase. I mean, I'm not sitting here saying, hey, listen, great comeback, but, whoop-de-doo. It was a great comeback, and they deserve to be lauded for that. But they're going to play some tough teams over the next month, including the Vikings. Oh, and the Jets. Your Jets. The Jets, you're never safe against the Jets. 13-point lead, 2 minutes to go. So the next month, Rich, is going to be we're going to find out a lot about the Dolphins. And Tua seems like a great kid. And obviously there's been a lot of people that have criticized him, myself included. I'm happy that he looks happy down there. And Waddle and Hill, a lot of yak, a lot of dink and dunk. But then if he can hit those balls that he did late in that football game, deep down the field, and he can be efficient, which he was last year as a guy throwing the ball over 20 yards down the field. If he can mix that in, then the sky's the limit for the productivity of that offense. But I want to see them win games in phase and against good teams regularly.
Two-time Super Bowl champ and host of the Green Light podcast, Chris Long, here on the Rich Eisen Show. What went through your mind when you watched the Saints and Bucs exchange blows, literally, after the figurative version of it for 2+ quarters? What'd you think of that one?
Well, it's funny because those games are always slugfest. You can definitely bet the under anytime they play. And the Bucs are going to have to win with the run game and on defense. I mean, it's just the way things are. As an aside, before we talk about that fight or whatever you want to call it,
sure.
We didn't count Brady out the year their defense was dominant late in his tenure in New England. We didn't count them out. I think it was 2019. It was my first year out, and they were on this historic pace defensively. And they don't have half the players on that defense that the Bucs do. I mean, they have a ton of playmakers. And offensively, even though the line between, a lot of new exciting weapons and just some alarming options to throw to outside is pretty thin. Like they can still compete in the NFC, and if you play defense like that, any given Sunday. So, definitely a good sign for the Bucs pulling that one out. The Saints have owned them, and Mike Evans, who has a history with Lattimore, which is going to become relevant when they hand down whatever suspension or punishment. The same thing happened a couple years ago. He's going to bat for Brady, which is interesting. The whole, it's Tom Brady. What do you want me to do? A lot of people questioned Tom taking a break. A lot of people wondered what that was going to do for the locker room. Tom Brady's the GOAT, and people recognize him as such, and they also really like Tom. And so people going to bat for Tom is not a surprise to me. But a lot of times, as a player, you'll be laying in bed the night before the game. And if you hate somebody on the other team, you're running through scenarios where you're like, if he does X, I have to do Y. You're almost anticipating the conflict. And I think Mike Evans was just waiting. And he was a little frustrated because the game wasn't getting going for him. I wonder what Bruce Arians said to him, and I wonder what Marshawn Lattimore said to Brady, because those are the two things that if I could wave a wand and be a fly on the wall, that's one of the awards we give out on our show. I'd love to know what was said in that exchange that made Mike Evans run off the sideline.
Take your best guess, Chris. Take your best shot.
Personal? I don't know, dude. I don't want to speculate, but for Mike Evans to lose it like that, I mean, either Bruce kind of, Bruce put a battery in his back, or he heard something he really didn't like. But there's so much that goes on during a game that we don't notice, right? There could have been 3-4 instances where this was boiling over during the game, and we just didn't see it, and this was the tipping point.
And Brady, Chris Long, has beaten the Cowboys when Dak was healthy, right, for 3 3/4, and wins in Dallas to start the season. And then the bugaboo for him since being the Bucs quarterback, certainly in the regular season, was winning in New Orleans in a slugfest in a game where he's feeling pressured and he is feeling frustrated, and they came out with the win. They're 2-0. Are they? I would imagine they're the team to beat in the NFC right now.
Well,
wouldn't you agree, or no?
Yeah. Well, you've got issues out west, right? I think the team to beat in the NFC is the Niners, especially
still in
light of what happened yesterday.
Why is that?
Trey Lance, because Jimmy G's gotten them there. I mean, Jimmy G had them a quarter away. They beat the defending Super Bowl champions twice last year. I think they're the most complete roster in the NFC, you could argue. And Jimmy G knows how to run the offense. So I think you're cutting hairs here, but the Niners, the Bucs, sure. The Packers, you need to see more. I think, shout out to my co-host Macon, who thinks the Vikings are the team to beat in the NFC. I think the Vikings are a provocative team to take a look at, but the Eagles are really stacked, right? So there's a lot of question marks, and teams in the NFC are built in a lot of different ways. So the matchups are going to be very interesting. So next 2 weeks for the Bucs, you get the Packers at home and you get the Chiefs at home. And I think what's really interesting is when Brady took that break, Rich, my biggest concern wasn't morale, it wasn't chemistry, it was quarterback center exchange, cadence, the whole operations of that offense and how they would run, because you need those reps. And to start on the road in two of the toughest places to play, well, especially New Orleans, against a team that, you're going to have to go silent count. They've gotten you. They can man up. They can cover your guys. They're physical. And then Dallas with those rushers, especially Michael Parsons, to pull out wins in those situations makes you feel good if you're a Bucs fan.
And then before I let you go, Chris Long, in the few minutes I have left with you, Greenlight Podcast, check it out. I've been on it. You'll enjoy it. I'm not just talking about my appearance from one. Anytime, yeah. Chris, you know that, please. Yeah. So let's talk AFC West before we go. The week began with that highly entertaining Thursday night affair where Mahomes, he's now won 2 different styles of games. The boat race where you can't stop the offense week 1 at Arizona, and then week 2 where they were struggling on offense first half and then come up with a win. Justin Herbert has fractured rib cartilage, which I didn't know actually was a thing.
And then, we used to say, my ribs messed up. Fractured cartilage.
I had no idea what that is. The Raiders, highly disappointing start, 0-2 after the Arizona Cardinals finally got things going and came back. What a win that was. And then Denver, it just seems like their coach has got something, like he hasn't gotten on track yet, or the moment might be too big for a first-time head coach. That's where I kind of want to start your omnibus take on the AFC West. What do you think is going on with Nathaniel Hackett and the Broncos after they pulled one out, though, yesterday?
I'm not really sure, man. I picked the Broncos to miss the playoffs. I don't know if that's a pick, but I just think it's a classic example of, and I've done it on other takes. So people just automatically assume something's going to work out because you have something on paper. Russell Wilson, the last couple of years has not been, the efficient Russell Wilson of old. He's made some mistakes. He hasn't, I just didn't expect them to play great complementary football. It doesn't seem like he's going to be a game manager at the right times. And then when you take into account that the new head coach is having trouble, like yesterday, you've got a punt, you got to call a timeout because you don't have a punt returner out there. You get a delay of game, you burn your last timeout. You're inside the red zone a bunch of times against Seattle. You fail to get points. You're inside the 5 twice yesterday. You fail to get, the points you should get. I mean, they're struggling at all the stuff that, the fingerprint of a new head coach should be on. I mean, 13 penalties, 100 yards. So tough start for Nathaniel Hackett. Another element of we just figure it works out because the guy knows Aaron Rodgers. I think he might be a fine head coach one day, but the start's been poor, and compounding it is that 4th and 6 or whatever it was the other night when he trots McManus out there to kick a ball, and you don't put the ball in the guy's hands who's probably going to the Hall of Fame, and a guy that your marriage just started with this guy. So as long as you're going to be in Denver, if you're Nathaniel Hackett or Nathaniel Hackett, you're probably going to be with Russell Wilson. And, you start the marriage off that way. That's like a bad honeymoon. So I expect that hangover to loom a week or two, and you're learning on the job too. So Houston, though, I want to shout Houston out. Lovie Smith deserves a lot of credit. He's got these guys playing competitive. I'll say that. I mean, they should have won that game last week. He wasn't aggressive enough. But the AFC West, man, the West as a whole, the NFC West, the AFC West, you thought it was a bunch of juggernauts in that conference. And it looks to me like the usual suspects in the AFC West. And the big question for me is how can Justin play with his ribs messed up? I know that sucked as a defensive end when your ribs got fractured, you had cartilage or whatever it was. But for him to turn in that performance on Thursday, or on what night was that? Thursday. That was night.
Thursday, yeah. Man, when he couldn't pick up the first down with his legs, where it was just okay, I'm just going to flip the ball down and try on 4th and 1 rather than run and maybe get hit or slide. It's going to hurt my ribs sliding. And then he throws a 40-yard frozen rope on 4th down. It's just I've never seen anything like that. That was wild.
It was jaw-dropping. It went from, I'm pretty sure in today's day and age, online, we're going to be calling for him to be pulled out of the game. And the Chargers are going to get, skewered for having him in the football game to, oh, that's why he's in the football game. 4th and 1, not just trying to pick up the first down, but knowing that, you can't sustain a drive and you got to go for it all, and you go for it all, and you hit. The one thing in that game, and I'm a big fan of the Chiefs. I think their demise was greatly exaggerated and all that, but we overreacted to the offense and their function week 1 against the Cardinals, who are kind of hapless at times. And And then week 2, if Justin Herbert just doesn't throw that pick, I know it's a big if, but it's one play, and it's inside the 5, that game is completely different. So the Chiefs have still got stuff to work out, but they are the Chiefs. And one thing about the Chiefs that's impressed me over the last couple of years is they found ways to win games different ways. Like, everybody says, well, you lose Tyreek Hill, you're going to lose the Magic. They put up 44 to start the season. They've dabbled in running the ball more the past couple of years. Their offensive line's been retooled. Like, they lost everybody up front, right? A whole, window, a generation of offensive linemen up front, whether it was Schwartz or the whole gang. Like, they shuffled through, and they got a bunch of young guys in there, and they've learned to play together. So Andy Reid just continues to be awesome, and so does Patrick Mahomes.
Who's on the pod this week? Pop it. What do you got for me?
So we got on Mondays, and this pod's about to drop, but I got Kyle Long in, my brother, so now he's moved back home, and I'm kind of working with him, and it's been a lot of fun. We can kind of work together in person on Monday mornings, and then one of my old teammates, Bo Allen, joins me midweek to do a lot of kind of deeper dive film stuff. Because, on these Mondays, man, you're trying to download 16 games.
It's a lot.
What I can't wait for is digging into the games. Then we have Nicole Auerbach as well to cover some college football.
She's awesome.
Monday, too.
From The Athletic.
Great. So, yeah, from The Athletic.
Yeah, she's awesome. Have me on, Chris, please. Anytime. You got my number. Reach out. I'd love to do it. I'd love when you come on this program. It's terrific. You're terrific. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, and this guy named Will has been texting me, asking me if you'll come on his show.
Here's the deal, man. He's got to talk to his colleague who apparently has Vrabel shut down. Has Vrabel shut down our guy from going on his own pod? Has Lawan been shut down? Has Vrabel dropped the curtain down on Lawan bussing with the boys?
I think Vrabel failed the inspection on the bus.
There's no motor, and again, and they have put out a photograph every day. They're doing, but I made myself available during the summer. Lawan couldn't do it because he was in training camp. And now he's not even on his own pod. They have no motor and they have no co-host. Like, what's going on?
That's crazy. Will Compton, he's got Jameis Winston back problems from carrying that thing. So, yeah, throw that guy a bone, man. Rich, it was good talking to you, man.
Right back at you. Anytime. That's Chris Long at Joel91 on Twitter. I follow him. You should as well. And Chris Long, check out the Greenlight Podcast, where all podcasts are acquired, right here on The Rich Eisen Show.